Okay.
Yeah, okay.
So, notebooks are scripts because people who love scripts usually hate notebooks. I have one that will let you beat the stock market, and you probably all want to look into it. So, let's do that. I will not open it in anything else but Finder and double-click it. So this is what it looks like. This program, by the way, is called Interact, without the I at the beginning. Don't ask me why, but it's very useful. So this is some mock-up script, and it will not actually teach you how to beat the stock market. But if we run it, you will see at the very end, it produces a plot, which looks like, most stocks probably look. So, and the sophisticated analysis they will do, and that we will use to predict or show off, notebooks as scripts, is they will highlight part of this curve. And we'll just pretend that this is the part of the curve that we're trying to analyze or do something clever with, yeah? And if you look at the beginning, we define two parameters, the start date and the end date. And usually what you would do if you want to run this for a different date range, you would modify that parameter, you would rerun your notebook, you would get a different plot. Or maybe you get a phone call in between, and then you've edited the parameters, not updated the plot, and you come back, and you probably think now, actually, we found it, we know how to beat the stock market. So what do we do about this? You go to your terminal, and you install a small package called Papermill, and that lets you run a notebook as a script. And the way you do that is you go to one of the cells where you've defined all your parameters. And in Interact, there's a nice drop-down menu that you can just say, this is a parameter cell. You get a nice blue bar over it. If you're using Jupyter Notebooks, or Jupyter Notebook, the normal interface, you have to look at the metadata and add a tag. Maybe one day they'll implement a UI for it. But now what you can do is you run Papermill, and you give the name of the script or notebook that you want to run, a output notebook where you want to store it, and then you just say stop date should be some other date. And you run this, and you get a progress bar, which is fantastic. But in your Finder, you will see there's now a new notebook, which you can double click. You don't need to go to your web browser. And you learn that you have to save your notebook. Yeah, so you press save, and then you rerun it. Maybe we should add a feature around that. Okay, so you double click it. There we go. So you see the cell that's still there, that's the one where we defined our parameters, but we injected a new one that has actually the value that we defined on the command line. And if you scroll to the end, you see that all of it is red now. And you can run this with maybe some other dates. And this is actually then the point I want to make, why I think it's quite useful to be able to run your notebooks as scripts. Because this notebook ran completely fine. There was no error. There was no exception. It didn't segfault, nothing like that. But if you look at the end of the notebook as a human, you understand there's something that's gone wrong. And actually, often if you have scripts that process some data that you fetch from somewhere else in the world, this happens quite often. At least to me, it happens quite often that notebooks or jobs still run, but the output they produce is complete nonsense. And unfortunately, they don't raise an exception. And now it's actually quite nice to be able to go back in your notebook and see all the things that you were plotting, printing, data framing, whatever you were doing while you were developing this notebook. And you've got everything in the notebook right there, instead of having your script, a log file, and a bunch of plots, which now you don't know which line in the script generated, which plot, etc. So Interact is a project that builds all sorts of interactive computing tools, including a desktop program to run notebooks, and Papermill, which is a command line program that lets you run notebooks as scripts. Thank you very much.